Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 2, Chapter 2, Homecoming. Written and narrated by T.S. Proart. With a sharp surge and blast of power, the fabric of reality shattered open, looking akin to a sledgehammer crashing upon a flimsy piece of glass. These reality-bent shards drifted upwards into a stable levitation, while sparks of blue and white energy gently fluttered out from the portal's front, where Void, Jida, Joby, and Pofnu cautiously stepped out of. Leaning forwards with his arms cautiously out at his sides, Void marched in a tense manner as his girls did the same from behind. They didn't know what to expect, what they would encounter. For all of them, this was brand new territory, lands that they had no right being within. So to say the least, tensions were at an all-time high, so it was best to stay alert. Whoa. Now ain't this just interesting? Jida said to the others as they all began to take in their surroundings. The group had found themselves within what appeared to be a fog-filled muddy forest that was filled up with pine trees. However, these pines looked to be 3 times the size of the ones back on Earth. Instead of having green bristles, they had dark blue ones that hung on the large pine cones. These human-sized cones looked equivalent to the ones back home, but pulsated with a sapphire luminescence deep within. Below their feet, the Novasun family stood upon wet mud, which was accompanied by a lot of tall, glowing blue grass. Inside each strand of blue, there was a hint of energy that shimmered like a lightning bug, leaving everyone a tad amazed at the nature of this land. As a cherry on top, there were strange alien-looking flowers, consisting of large ones and small ones that all shimmered with a bright red glow. What in Matira's name? Void asked as his arm alerted with the words,
"Reality destination saved. Welcome to the Matter Realm, aka Savaheim by its residents."
Is it snowing? Pofnu asked, while Void looked at his arm in a curious nature. Staring upwards, her, Jida, and Joby took notice of glowing blue particles falling from above that gently faded the water before landfall, more than likely explaining the mud. With a small huff, Void lowered his arm and looked back forward, taking notice of a strange trail that led to somewhere. Alright, looks like we have a path. Let's get going. Void stated as he gestured forwards with his hand that got the others' attention. Now, side by side, the Novasun family slowly trekked their way across the mud-filled path, listening in to the strange wildlife along with their own thoughts, Joby of which found herself saying them aloud. You know, it's really settling in for me now that we're gonna see another you. Like, an actual other you. That's gonna be weird, she stated, while looking off to the side in a contemplative manner. Indeed, but it begs the question, will they be a friend or a foe? Will we see other versions of our friends? There could be a lot of oddities in this world. For all we know, this reflection could just be a mere baby, Pofnu stated, causing Void to silently ponder. Well, if they are a grown man, I wonder if they'll be just as hot as you. Jida said with a smirk, trying to lighten the mood with a joke. Jida, there's a time and place for everything. Now is not the time, nor the place. Void babbled with a blush, while his wife just playfully shoulder nudged him. After this, however, the group suddenly halted in their tracks, for the sound of a loud branch snapping from afar came both nice and crisp for all to hear. Whoa, what was that? Joby asked, as she and the others clenched their fists and looked around themselves, wondering as to where the noise had come from. Don't know, but that sounded really loud. Stay alert, Void said as they all watched the fog and trees around them, not noticing anything noteworthy. With a silent gesture, Void pointed onwards, giving the okay to keep moving. Yet as they continued forth, the four of them failed to notice a large, bony, and slimy tail lifting up and swaying away as a large beast now quietly stalked them from the trees, curious as to who they were. Breaking through into a clearing and walking upon a blackened sand, Void and the others were instantly met with the sight of a beach's end, one that was connected to a clouded-over vast array of glistening blue water. Dead end? Joby questioned with a nervous tone as she rubbed the back of her head. Listening to the gentle and splashing waves, Void bit the inside of his cheek and marched forwards, all up till stopping at the water's edge. Beside him, Jida looked onwards as well, feeling a tad stumped as well on where to go from there. Water. She groaned, still having a fear for it after all this time. Squinting through the fog, Void tried his hardest to see if there was anything beyond its cold haze. He knew there had to be more. This was a Salvaheim after all. But it begged the question, would there be more sparks? Or would it be something else entirely? That thought alone ate at Void on the inside. A part of this even felt a bit taboo. But he couldn't just leave Jay with that monster. He had to do this. He had to find his reflections. He had to save his baby. Deploying his mask, the Spark readied himself to both scan and see if there was something beyond the veil, but then suddenly stopped, as the ground shook behind him and his family. What the? Jada asked, as she was the first to turn, but suddenly fell into a state of shock and fear at what she saw. "Oh my god!" she called, as the others turned and too fell still upon what was before their eyes. Slowly marching out from the trees came what was essentially a walking, completed, skeletal structure of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. What the? Void exclaimed as he activated his spear and stood in front of the others. Their eyes didn't deceive them. It was as though a museum exhibit had come to life before their very eyes. Yet, the skeleton wasn't alone in its design. Surrounding its body and keeping its bones all together were vast amounts of glowing purple slime that looked almost mismatched across its hardened form. The undead dinosaur both drooled and huffed as it then slowly marched its way forwards towards the group, who now had both Jida and Joby ready to fight the beast. Pofnu, however, did not ready her weapon, for unlike the others, she could sense something they couldn't, a spiritual essence that radiated off the beast's body. "Wait!" the fox said as the large undead animal got closer and closer. Running in front of the group in a now red glowing form, Pofnu stood her ground and raised her left hand outwards towards the monster, leaving the others both concerned and curious as to what she was doing. "Pofnu, get back!" Void asked as the dinosaur lowered its skull in what could only be described as a curious gesture. With furrowed eyes, the kitsune watched as the beast's bony snout was now less than a foot away from her palm. Using her spectral essence, she began to get a feel for the skeleton's mannerisms, its goals and intentions. As she got the full scope upon its morals, the giant Rex suddenly opened its mouth and began to pant, and then wag its tail. What the hell? Jetta asked as the large animal shook and rattled with excitement towards the group, acting as though to be one big puppy dog. Smiling, Pofnu reached out and rubbed the creature's snout, as it then happily barked with a spectral tone to its vocals. It appeared that it meant no harm. "At ease, everyone. She's friendly," Pofnu exclaimed as the skeleton rose herself up and then gently approached Void and the others. "She?" the Spark curiously asked as the Rex leaned down and then nudged its head in the void, demanding to be scratched that instant. Whoa, easy girl, easy, he awkwardly said as he was then pushed into the sand and nuzzled with love. Gasping in shock, both Joby and Jida giggled to the bizarre sight as Void somewhat fought for his life from the strange dog-like behavior. Okay. He gruffed while scratching the creature's snout, causing its tail to wag even faster. Oh, she's just a big dog, Joby said as both her and Jida approached and began to scratch the creature's neck that oozed with slime. A very big dog, Jida said as the creature finally let Void stand back to full height. She recognizes you, but she doesn't realize that you aren't her Void, Pavnu said as she then pat the side of the beast's leg. What? How do you know that? Joby inquired as the fox just smiled in response. This creature is infused with some kind of ectoplasm that seems to be giving its spirit essence life. I can sense it through my own natural abilities, and because of that, I'm able to read its thoughts, Pavnu explained as the Rex turned and nuzzled her as well. Ha! It seems as though whichever Void lives in this realm tamed the beast, and it now acts as some kind of guard dog, Pavnu finished before scratching the animal once again. Brushing himself off, Void gently walked up to the animal with curious eyes, left in wonder as to how such a creature could come to be. Fascinating. Does it have a name? Void asked Pavnu, who swiftly reached out again to see if there was indeed as such. Sensing here, it seems that the beast responds to the name Trixie, the fox revealed, while red spectral energy continued to fizzle off her body. Trixie? Void asked, causing the beast to instantly sway its head and wag its tail faster than before. Oh! Trixie! The spark repeated, causing the beast to hunch down and wiggle its body like an overly hyper cat. Wow. I never thought a pile of bones could be so cute, Jida said with a cross in her arms, while Nox spoke from his radioed end.
Okay. Now I think I've seen everything.
Getting a small idea in his head, Void retracted his spear, approached the beast once more, then asked something that he wasn't sure would work or not. If his reflection was able to not only tame, but possibly train the undead dinosaur, then perhaps it could understand commands. Without any clear direction on where to go, maybe the large dog could be their key in finding the other Void within this foggy world. Trixie, could you take us home? The spark asked, leaving the beast to tilt its head, then pant, and then lower itself fully. Lying down, Trixie suddenly swayed her head back as a gesture, looking to say, hop on. I think she's wanting us to get on her back, Pavnu said as she gently approached and hopped upon Trixie's spine. Wait, we're gonna ride a dinosaur? Oh, that's awesome, Joby ecstatically exclaimed as she then leapt upon the animal's back as well. Wait, seriously? Blue, are you sure about this? Jida asked as Void walked up and promptly sat right behind Trixie's head. Turning back around, Void reached down and held out his mechanical hand for his wife's. The look he presented to her was one that was best described as standing on business. They were going to do this. Without asking again, Jida took Void's hand and got atop the dinosaur. As she sat behind her husband, she wrapped her arms around Void's waist for support, while Pavnu did the same in regards for Joby. Sensing that the ones atop her back were ready, Trixie huffed with a ghostly breath, stood, and then roared into the sky. Before the others had a chance to react, the giant tyrant queen leapt forwards and suddenly began to sprint across the water, using a spiritual essence to not slip under the waves. Oh, Jesus! Jida shouted in shock as they all held on tightly upon the creature's aged bones. Picking up speed, the Rex began to grow faster and faster as it leapt, skid, and slid across the waves, until suddenly crossing out of the fog and entering into one of the most beautiful sights the Novasun family had ever seen. Batira's might. Void gasped in awe as he and the others took in the sight of this brand new Salvaheim. The water that the Rex had been running upon now glistened in a late afternoon light. This beautiful glow was a starry, aurora borealis, pink and purple sky that shimmered with bright shooting stars. Ahead of them, they could now see that they were on a very large lake that led all the way up to a huge landmass within the distance. Upon it were giant red and blue petal trees, some normal-sized, while others nearly stretched to the sky itself. Accompanying these massive nature titans were also large flowers and mountains that looked to have a massive town within the center of it all. From afar, the Novasun family could see beautifully carved wooden structures that glowed with the same bioluminescence from the woods. Plant-looking street lights curved upwards upon pathways and roads that had the faint outlines of civilians upon it. Above their heads, they could see what appeared to be floating islands with large roots connecting to the world itself. Alongside this were bee and wasp-looking creatures carrying bags of some kind of blue pollen. One of these beings even smiled and waved down upon the group, leaving Jida to awkwardly wave back. What in Matira's name? Joby exclaimed in awe as red and yellow peaceful-looking sea serpents splashed up and down at each other's sides, sounding akin to whales. Are those... by the gods! Pognu gasped as she pointed towards the mountains, as what appeared to be all kinds of dragons soared above their massive stone forms, simply adding more on how vastly different this Salvaheim was to Void's original home. As the massive cherry on top, in the far-off distance, was a titanic, oversized tree that grazed the stars above. This plant looked to be thousands of feet tall, with an array of rainbow-colored leaves, all shimmering gorgeously within the night sky. A world tree, as it would seem. It's so... Jida softly said, leaving Void to finish her sentence. Beautiful. Nearing upon the town's shoreline, Trixie leapt upwards, then slid to a stop upon the sand. Releasing another roar and then gently lowering her head, she gestured for the group to take their leave, for they had arrived at what Trixie knew to be as home. Slowly getting up, Void and the others carefully walked across the Rex's back and head before hopping upon a mossy red stone sidewalk that sprouted with small blue flowers and a fiery flare of energy. Looking on, some of the townsfolk eyed the group as they turned and scratched the animal's skull. Thanks, girl. Void thanked before he was suddenly licked by the spirit's ghostly purple tongue. After that, Trixie huffed, turned, and began marching in a leftward direction, heading to be on her lonesome within the town, that Void and the rest now turned the face. Looking upon them with greeting stares were both familiar yet different looking beings that either waved or nodded in acknowledgement. For Void's sanity's sake, he was thankful to see that there were no sparks, but instead, people who looked akin to ripples and thorns. However, wearing more robes and multicolored tunic sets instead. Alongside these strange race reflections, there was a new kind of being that no one recognized. Before their eyes were tall, humanoid, wooden women. It was the best way Void and his family could describe it. They looked elegant and wise, having some red flowers blooming off their bodies, others blue, and some green, creating quite the pretty sight before their eyes. Melkaiti, one said with a beautiful bow. Melkaiti, another stated as they walked on by, leaving the Novasuns a tad surprised. Melkaiti? Jada asked, while waving towards one of the women, who was all the happier in acknowledgement. Melkai! She greeted, leaving out the tea part.
What the hell does that mean?
Nock asked through the speaker in Void's arm, while the Spark simply put a hand to his chest and smiled a tad. That's old Sparkese for hello. he revealed, before gesturing the group forwards in a head tilt. Seeing this, they all collected their bearings and began to walk down the red stone path, and entered the town. Going under a gateway entrance, Void was able to read the location's name that was presented above. Welcome to Bournemouth, it greeted, in a familiar language he knew all too well. Huh, Void said, as the group began to walk through the town. As they did, they were greeted by many things. First thing of note was the town's buildings. Some of these structures had been made up from the glowing wood itself, as well as within the neighboring trees, creating what looked to be beautiful, almost ancient-like huts and structures. The best way Void and the others could describe them was like a blend between Japanese, Nordic, and modern stylization. The wood around had been so elegantly carved, while the resting plants all bloomed up with spiraling shapes, and the added stone elements were pristine and sharp. The most stunning thing about it was that it had been crafted for little things like homes and stores. It was truly remarkable, the Novasun family thought. "Tea, Melkai," greeted one of the ripple-looking men as they passed by.
Melkai tea.
A plant man also said, who looked like a walking bush more than anything else. Huh. Everyone seems to be calling you Tea, Uncle Void, Joby stated as an insect-looking man waddled on by, looking like a blend between both a grasshopper and roly-poly. Yeah, I guess that's the name of my reflection around these parts, Void simply assumed, as both him and Jida locked their hands together mid-stride. As they continued on, they passed more and more strange folk, who all greeted Void, thinking him to be this T character. Whoever this reflection was, it was clear that they were quite popular around these parts, perhaps a hero or celebrity. The Spark didn't know yet, but would soon enough, as they all continued on through the strange land. As they marched further, Jida turned and stopped, gazing upon something that caught her eye. Whoa, guys, look at this. She beckoned to the others, who now turned upon what looked to be an old, rusted-down warship, stripped all the way down to its skeletal structure. The craft itself looked to have once been a mighty vessel in its prime. It looked to have been designed in the shape of an old pirate ship, curved with a strong bow and stern, added with a pole where a sail once soared. Yet, unlike the one from the Seven Seas, this craft looked to once have wings of flight and a pair of old engines that rotted in the back, making it look almost akin to a hybrid of the past and distant future. Having been guarded off by a large viewing gate, there was a small sign upon a lower rock that revealed the name of the ship. The last recovered Star Racer, one of the mighty vessels used by the Dyads in the Great Matter War. Matter War? Void asked aloud in a curious tone as he knelt down to read the plaque a little bit more closely. Sure looks like it came from a war, said Pofnu before turning to her side and taking note of something peculiar. Off near the back, within what looked to be a small town sector, there was a building that looked rather familiar. Being designed in the 3 floors, crafted wood, spring-colored paint, and glowing materials, was a building that had a large glass front and a cute little sign above. Father, Pavnu asked as she had an inclination upon what they were looking at. Turning around and getting back to his feet, Void and the others eyed the fox, but soon followed her gaze upon what had gotten her so curious. Reading the sign's alien-looking font, Void's hollow-looking eyes perked up with sudden realization. Could it be, he thought, as he then translated the sign's name. Sarvi Sweets. Looking at one another, everyone both realized that this could very well be their key in finding this mysterious T reflection. Yet, there was a hint of hesitancy within them as well. Would this Sarv be like the one back home, or like a completely different person? Taking a breath, Void squeezed Jida's hand harder, as he and the rest took long steps forward and marched their way to the bakery. Stepping inside, everyone heard the sound of a little bell chime above their heads as they were greeted to an almost one-to-one replica of the Sarvi suites back home. All similar counters, tables, and booths, just being replaced by the Salvaheim's building materials instead, making things feel all the more mystical and fantasy-like in nature. Sarv? Void suddenly asked aloud as his girl stood close by. Oh, just 1 minute, hon. A familiar but older-sounding voice came from the back that left everyone a little stunned. For a moment, they all heard the sounds of familiar pans and pots rattling and falling, giving the impression that this Sarv was going to be rather similar to the one they all knew and loved. Soon enough, the massive bird came around the corner with a smile on display. This Sarv was almost one-to-one in terms of appearance, same prosthetic leg and body shape to be exact. However, there were key differences. For one, her feathers were much more of a darker and black shade, with hints of graying ones beneath. Instead of bright yellow eyes, this Sarv's were just pure baby blue. No irises, just a glowing pair of large lookers. Instead of wearing a scarf or any baking clothes and armor, she wore a faint red tunic robe that was designed with strange and unrecognizable symbols. However, minus these differences, it appeared to be the same kind-hearted Sarv who was just about 30 years older or so in this world. Melkati, I didn't think you'd be back so soon. Let me guess, did Jada ask you to get another thing? Sarv questioned with a happy tone that quickly fell to a state of pure confusion towards what she saw. What a matter? T, where's your hat? Jeez, where's your beard? Why are you smaller and... Joby? Sarv asked as she turned from Void and then towards the young light matter woman, who just awkwardly waved. Hon, what are you doing back so early? Wait, who are you two? Sarv continued as she pointed towards Jida and Pofnu, who didn't know how to respond. Actually, T, you look 30 years younger. What are... Sarv stopped herself as she began to really notice the differences within her guests that left her a bit silent. Awkwardly smiling and then taking a step forwards, Void looked up to the Elder Thorn and began to explain in a sort of easing into it like manner. Hi, Sarv. Okay. This may be a bit confusing, but you see, we're not... Void began, before suddenly getting caught off by the Thorn's loud gasp. Stepping back with shock, she eyed the four travelers with a sense of awe before beginning to speak aloud. Wait a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are y'all reflections? Sarv asked, cutting right through the build-up and figuring it out on the spot. Yeah. Void said with another awkward smile and shrug, leaving the massive thorn that tilted her head nearly sideways. Hi, I'm Joby, but I guess not your Joby? Wait a second, there's another me around here? The young spark asked, as Jida and Pofnu approached as well. Greetings, Sarv. I am Pofnu, Jida's daughter. The spiritual fox greeted, while Jida did the same. I'm Jida. And did you mention that there was also another... me? She asked, as Void held out his mechanical hand. And I'm Void Novason. Unless you already knew that. The spark greeted, causing the large bird to snap back to a regular state and shake on it. Oh, wow. I mean, kinda? Unless you're... I'm sorry, what in the shrimple dips are y'all doing here? How did you get here and why? The massive bird asked, as Jida approached to be beside Void. It's a long story, she said as Joby approached as well. We're here looking for someone, she said, while Pofnu did the same. Someone who we think can help us," she added before Void promptly explained. "We're here searching for this world's version of myself, and we desperately need their help. Could you maybe lead us to him? Or her?" Void asked, while Sarv looked down upon the much younger but tired versions of the people she knew. Although having only known them for a few minutes, Sarv could tell that something terrible had happened in their lives, something that had led them to this place. The look in this Void's eyes was something Sarv recognized. It was the stare of a fearful father, one who is desperate to save his own blood. "By the gods," she whispered before crossing her feathered arms. Yes, of course, Sugars, just give me a moment to collect my bearings." The owl replied, leaving Void the nod in a thankful gesture. Walking up a stone stair path upon a hill, Void and the others followed closely behind Sarv, who now had a curved walking staff in her right feathered hand. Above, the purple and pink shaded sky continued to twinkle and sparkle with shooting stars, all while the giant world tree still bloomed beautifully in the far-off distance. The blue grass danced and swayed within the wind beneath their shoes, as Void and Jida remained interlocked upon each other's sides, with Joby and Povnu close behind. Their hearts were violently racing, minds rushing like water. A sense of nervousness had entered their souls. Not only was there a Void reflection, but a Jida and Joby as well as who knows else, which just opened the door for a whole other world of questions. "Blue, I'm nervous," Jida revealed as she gripped Void's hand tighter. "I am too, Freckles. But if he or they are anything like us, then they'll understand. They have to," Void expressed in a comforting manner as he and the others all made it to the hill's top and took in a very calming and serene sight. There, sitting gently atop the hill, was a home. A two-floored, suburban-looking cabin home that was built up with both low blue and red woods. Glowing blue lanterns made up from glass bottles dangled from an overhanging porch roof that went all the way around to the backyard side. Wooden trunks acted as pillars for this roof as well, while pulled curtain windows shimmered with a warm yellow light from inside. Flowers bloomed up and around the home's base that all grooved within the wind. In a way, this structure looked like a refined version of Void and Jida's cabin back at home. If this was any indication of what was to come, then it was time to face it head on. Looking upwards, Void and the others could see the faint hint of smoke and burning wood emanating from the backyard. A campfire? They all thought, as Sarv turned and gestured for them to follow. "Come, I assure you he doesn't bite," the owl joked as she began to round the left side corner of the home. Looking at one another, Void and his family all silently agreed to move forwards and followed the large bird in swift strides. "Here we go," Void quietly said as they all turned and entered the mysterious reflection's backyard. There, sitting with their backs facing towards the Novasuns, were two figures upon a log. A beautiful purple fire roared in a tiny smoke pit as the two unknowns leaned against each other's shoulders. On the right-hand side of this duo was a fiery glowing orange spectral force. They appeared to be wearing old armor and raggedy clothes that were also an orange glowing essence. A floating head gently levitated above the spirit's necklace form, having what appeared to be several flower petal-like strands of energy going atop and around its spherical head. It was unclear if it was hair or a strange set of body parts, but it created a sight that left everyone stunned. However, to the figure's left was most definitely the reflection. Although only his back, there was already some discernible differences in appearance. The first thing was the noticeable old and withered blue cap upon his head that rested above 6 noticeably more spherical horns that were in the same spots as Void's. The reflection's skin was more of an old, scarred-up white that pulsated with blue veins beneath. His upper torso was more rectangular and box-shaped, being made up of a gunmetal scratched-up gray that went to the backside of the Spark's crest, which was a much darker blue than Void's. An old orange scarf lay rested and wrinkled around this reflection's neck that sat beside a pair of, dare one say, large and fit metal-plated arms. Unlike Void's, the reflection's limbs were more natural and stiff, having 4 light blue sphere joints that acted as both shoulders and elbows. Around his waist appeared to be a belt, an orange rag, as well as a double set of tool holders that went down to his knees. Yet, the face remained to be seen. "Oh my god," Jida whispered as the others stared on in intense anticipation. Pardon me, T. I know it's you and Jida's weekend, but we've got some visitors who wish to speak with you. Very important visitors, it would seem. Sarv greeted, while glancing down at Void and his family, who still remained nervous. Visitors? The reflection spoke in a deeper yet more gentle tone, as both him and Jida perked up. Yes, they're here with me right now, and you really just need to see this. Sarv stated again as she stood off to the side and gave the two sides some space. "Oh, well, alright. You've piqued my curiosity. Let's see what we have here." Standing up and then turning, T and the spectral Jida held a calm and gentle smile on display that suddenly dropped in shock as to what they saw. T was a tall and seasoned-looking Void. His spark crest shimmered a glinting blue, while a big, bushy-bearded face with middle-aged oval eyes looked downwards with white and stunned irises. Old scars crossed over his hairy face, with one being most prominently over the right side of his eye as a slash. Below, he had humanoid-shaped mechanical hands, old greenish-blue pants, as well as dry, muddied, gray and blue boots. The reflective Jida had a similar overall shape to her eyes and face. It was scarred as well, but not to the same extent as T. She had a hardened, battle-ready chest piece, sharp-toed metal boots, netted arm braces, shoulder pads, as well as a scarf and torn battle skirt. This Jida variant looked to have been a knight in her prime, a knight that seemed to clearly have fallen in battle. Gulping, both Void and his Jida approached their reflections, who held the look of utmost curiosity. Together, the reflections walked forward as well, while Joby, Povnu, and Sarv all watched with curious eyes to see how this would go down. Standing before one another with no hostile intentions, Void and T, along with Jida, and well, Jida, locked eyes in stunned silence. Tilting his head to the right, Void eyed T with an inquisitive gaze, leading to the reflection to mimic the spark's motions by tilting his cap-covered head to the left. Turning their heads as well, the two Jidas mimicked one another too, both unsure of what to say. Raising their arms up, the two sparks mimicked one another by waving and throwing their arms out at their sides. As this happened, T realized what was going on and began to get a kick out of it. The older spark-like being started to smile and chuckle, while Void held a continuous look of awe. Smirking, the spectral Jida reached her hand out and brushed the living Jida's hair aside, adjusting it for her before speaking. She said in an echoing voice, leaving the living Jida to wonder how and why her other self was dead. Well, if this isn't the most interesting thing I've seen in years. T said as he stopped mimicking Void and stood back with an ever-present smile. You could say that again, hon, replied the spectral Jida as the four continued to stare in stunned awe. That's so weird, Joby whispered to Povnu as Sarv just watched with contemplative eyes. Hold on. Let me just take a shot in the dark here. You must be me. Or someone who looks oddly similar to me. T asked as he hunched down and playfully pointed a finger at Void. Yes, I'm you. The name's Void. Void Novason. The spark finally greeted with a hand outstretched as he snapped out of his awed state towards his other self, who suddenly lit up like a light bulb. Ha! Knew it! You're a reflection! Another one, a real one! T said with a short clap and audibly excited reaction as he looked towards his Jida, who simply crossed her arms and smirked towards her other self, leaving the living Jida to chuckle and do the same. Oh, apologies there, friends. The name's Void as well. Void the Matterbirth. But you can just call me T. The Matterbirth greeted as he reached out and shook his other's hand, in turn causing the both of their horns to glow in reaction. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you must be... T went on as he looked towards Void's wife. Jida Woods. She exclaimed as the spectral Jida began to float around her in a positive light. Well, aren't you just the most gorgeous thing? I love your hair and, oh, your outfit. Are those constellations? And a guitar. Are you a musician? Oh, sweetie, this looks phenomenal on you. Count me jealous. The ghost exclaimed in a booming and complimentive voice, causing the living Jida to smile in a bashful response. Oh, thank you. Your armor looks very, very dazzling, she said, causing the spirit to giggle in glee. Hi, we're here too. Joey greeted as both her and Pavnu approached the Matterbirth and Spirit in wondrous steps. Turning his head, T's eyes lit up once more as he looked down upon the two girls, one of whom he recognized with a sense of parental love. Joby. T spoke with a smile as he reached out and caressed the side of her face. And you are? T then asked as he looked at the fox's glowing blue and pink form. Pavnu Jida's daughter. The kitten greeted, leaving the Matterbirth to blink in shock. Pavnu. Wow, you're, well, certainly the most different one here out of this world. Replied the seasoned orb as he reached behind his head and scratched, in turn causing Pavnu's tails to sway happily from side to side. Wow. Okay, sorry for the reaction. This is just the last thing I expected to see today. T went on as the spectral Jida surrounded Void in her glowing orange aura, finally greeting the variant of her husband. Hello, handsome. T, he looks like you when we first met. It's almost like looking into the past. The spirit said as she pinched Void's cheek, causing him to suddenly blush. You could say that again, dear. T replied as he finally turned and looked upon Void's Jida, who gazed up in a blushing awe towards her husband's taller variant. Reaching, the Matterbirth brushed the other side of Jida's hair in a gentle manner, before speaking out the only greeting compliment he could think of. Beautiful in every universe, he said, the Jida's flustering heart, before patting her shoulder and turning back to the group in its entirety. Apologies, sorry, it's been a hot minute since I've encountered any variants. So, what has brought you all here to our Matter Realm? Or Savaheim, as we call it here. T asked in a curious nature, as both him and Jida stood side by side. Now, falling back to the situation at hand, Void and his girls suddenly returned to a state of fear and anxiety for their son. Seeing this, their reflections could sense a shift, and two fell to a stern look. It's a long story, Void stated as he took a breath and looked off to the side. A very, very long story, he repeated, leaving T to tilt his head. I see. Would you care to discuss this over a meal, friends? My jet is preparing dinner as we speak. T offered with his gentle words, causing the Novasons to look upwards in sudden gratitude. That would be appreciated. Wouldn't you all agree? Jida said, as she turned towards her husband and two girls. Yes. Please, a meal would be wonderful. Void said the T and his Jida's nodding approval. Very well. Jet, prepare a table for 6, please. We've got some guests. T suddenly spoke into his arm and stood with an audible metal back crack. Are y'all good for the time being? Sarv asked as she got ready to depart. Yes. You may head back, Sarv. Thank you. T replied as he gestured for Void and the others to follow his now walking stride. Come. We have prepared pasta. I do hope you enjoy it. T revealed the Void's surprise and sudden delight.